September 7th, 1935, one of the biggest storms of the century hit the Florida Keys. This huge storm was nameless. But before we talk about this tragedy, let's set the scene before it. The Keys were going bankrupt, but they needed more bridges to be built. So they hired jobless World War I veterans to build them. They were paid $30 a month plus free room and board. It was because of Fred Gent and Ray Sheldon's mistakes that they died. Fred Gent and Ray Sheldon were honest men who made a mistake. Fred knew hurricanes were a threat, and in the summer of 1935, he thought he had fixed that problem. He had the railway train from Miami to act as an evacuation train that would get the veterans to safety if the storm came their way. But Gent managed to misunderstand the communications. Ray Sheldon, a Massachusetts native, was hired as the supervisor of their work camps. Gent had told Ray that the train would be ready to get them at any moment, even though the railway officials tried to tell him that they would need several hours to get the train ready. Fred had missed that detail. In August 1935, some thunderstorms came off the west coast of Africa and rolled over the Atlantic Ocean. These tropical storms could grow into a hurricane. Because meteorologists didn't have a lot of good tools to track hurricanes, they couldn't tell it would be the storm of the century. By the time of Labor Day weekend, the growing storm had reached the Bahamas. No one thought it was going to hit them. On an early Sunday morning, Ray got a phone call. The meteorologist said that things could start getting bad on Monday and that he should get back to the camps. Even though Sheldon had made it clear to the other administrators that he was in charge, he knew the veterans were not ready for the evacuation, so he wanted to wait until the very last moment to send them on the train. On Monday, Labor Day, Gent called the station to send the evacuation train. It was at that time Gent realized it would take hours to get the train ready. After over 2 hours, the train set off for the Keys. When the train finally got there, the wind was already blowing hard. The World War I veterans got onto the train as fast as they could. As the train left the mainland and entered the islands, the strong waves were breaking along the tracks, so the evacuation train had to slow down. When they were only a few miles from Islamorada, they had to come to a stop when a steel cable landed on the tracks. Over an hour was spent trying to fix it. As the train got to Islamorada, they picked up Ray and the other administrators. Ray got into the locomotive. After only a few minutes later, the storm's wind hit the train like a baseball bat and sent most of the train flying. Only the heavy locomotive had survived. The work camps were destroyed by flying logs and coconuts, or by being blown off the island completely. When the storm was over, at least 408 civilians had died in the storm, and over 400 men in the camps, too. When reporters got to the camps, everyone was outraged. Since Ray and Fred had survived the storm, they blamed them for the deaths of the veterans. The 1935 hurricane was the strongest to hit the United States. Even Hurricane Michael, which devastated the Florida Panhandle earlier this year, was not as strong. The unnamed storm had record-breaking wind speeds of 185 miles per hour. These winds would blow for more than a minute at a time, destroying everything in their way. The central pressure of the storm dropped below any storm on record to 892 millibars. Its eye was 8 miles wide. That is twice as big as Mount Kilimanjaro. The storm lasted for hours before it moved on to affect the Tampa Bay area, the Florida Panhandle, and Georgia. In total, 3 ships were lost: a Danish motor ship, the American tanker the Pablo, and an American steamship named the Dixie. The upper Florida Keys were the hardest hit. Islamorada was completely demolished. All in all, the powerful storm took many lives and destroyed many things. But not all was lost. Eleanor Roosevelt fought to keep the camps open and to help the state rebuild. Congress passed legislation to make overseas highways across the Keys, assuring that no one would be trapped in paradise again. Ernest Hemingway visited the Keys and wrote about the veterans who were lost. The veterans' lives were celebrated with full military honors and continue to be remembered today. Today, you can find the 1935 Labor Day Memorial that is a testament to the devastation of the hurricane and the hard work of the American people. Even though this storm was an immense tragedy, it had become a triumph through the recovery efforts, dedication, and spirit of Florida.